What would you do if the people who were supposed to believe in you most were the ones working hardest to make you feel like you were nothing? Before I tell you what I did, I need you to hear the one sentence my father said to me at a family dinner in front of 12 people, including my aunts, my cousins, my grandmother, and my brother Daniel, who sat right beside him and said absolutely nothing. He looked across the table at me and he said, "You are a disgrace to this family." Not the first time he had said it, not the last time either, but the last time it would land the way it had always landed, which was like something that had already decided where it was going before it left his mouth and arrived exactly where it was aimed. My name is Zara Collins, and I am 28 years old, and I grew up in a suburban household in Charlotte, North Carolina, the second of two children, and by every measurable standard of my parents' attention, the lesser of the two. My brother Daniel is 3 years older than me. He is the person my parents talked about at church, the person whose grades were announced at dinner, the person whose dreams were funded without question, and whose failures were absorbed without consequence. I am the person they compared to him. I am the person who was found lacking in the comparison every single time. I'm telling you this not for sympathy, though I understand if it sounds like I am asking for it, but because context is the only thing that makes the secret make sense, and the secret is the whole point of this story. Please hit like and subscribe before we go further. Drop your city in the comments right now. I love reading where you are watching from. Now, let me take you back to the beginning so you understand exactly what I was working with. The favoritism in my family was not subtle, and it was not occasional. It was the operating system of our household, and everything ran on it. When Daniel wanted to go to the state university, my parents paid his tuition, his housing, his meal plan, and gave him a monthly allowance for personal expenses. When I got into the same university 2 years later, my father said they had already stretched their budget for one child and I would need to find my own way. I found my own way. I worked at the campus bookstore and the coffee shop near the library, and I applied for every grant available, and I graduated with a business degree and a loan balance I paid off myself over 3 years. My parents came to Daniel's graduation with a cake and a card with money in it. They came to mine with my mother's camera and my father's particular expression of a man who is present out of obligation rather than pride. He took 3 photos. One was blurry. I kept them all. The comparisons happened at every family gathering. My aunt would ask about my job, and before I could finish answering, my father would say, "Daniel just got a promotion," and the conversation would pivot. My grandmother once told me I should be more like my brother, which was the most honest version of what everyone was thinking, and the only time anyone said it out loud. My mother's version was softer. She would say, "Zara, why can't you just," and then trail off into whatever she thought I should be doing differently, which changed depending on the week, but always contained the same implication, which was that what I was actually doing was not enough. Daniel was not cruel to me directly. He was something harder to name. Comfortable. Comfortable in his position as the one who was chosen, and genuinely unaware of what that comfort cost me because nobody had ever asked him to consider it. I did not blame him for a long time. Then I did. Then I stopped. Then I built something instead. For the first few years after college, I spent energy I did not have trying to change my parents' perception of me. I told myself that achievement would shift the dynamic, that if I built enough, they would eventually see it. I got promoted twice in 2 years at the marketing firm where I started after graduation. I told my parents at Sunday dinner. My father said, "That is good," and asked Daniel about his fantasy football league. I started freelancing on the side, taking on small business clients who needed brand strategy and content, building a client list in the hours after my day job ended. I told my mother. She said, "Make sure you are not overextending yourself," which was her version of concern and also her version of doubt, and both lived in the same sentence. I tried to talk to Daniel once, directly, about how I felt about the way our parents treated us differently. He listened. He said, "I think you're being a little sensitive, Zara." He said it the way people say things when they genuinely believe them, without malice, which is somehow harder to receive than malice, because malice at least acknowledges something is happening. I stopped trying to explain it after that conversation. Some things cannot be explained to someone whose entire life has been structured in a way that makes the thing invisible to them. What I did instead was go quiet. I stopped sharing updates, I stopped announcing things, I showed up at family dinners and I was present, and I said the right things, and I gave nothing away. My parents interpreted the quiet as further evidence of my lacking. My father said once to my mother, within my earshot, that Daniel had direction and Zara just seemed to be drifting. I was not drifting. I was building, in complete silence, for 3 years, and nobody in my
The
family
family
knew
dinner
the
was
full
in
shape of what
October,
I was
my
building
grandmother's
because I had
75th
decided that the
birthday,
announcement
the kind
could
of
wait
gathering where
until the
every
building
relative
was
within
done.
driving distance appears, and the table is too long for the room and everyone talks over everyone else, and the particular dynamics of the family are on full display for anyone paying attention. I had been paying attention my entire life. My father made a comment early in the evening about Daniel's new role at his company, a management position he had just been given, and the table responded with the warmth and congratulation that Daniel's milestones always produced. I smiled. I said, "That is great, Daniel." I meant it. An hour later, my cousin Marcus asked me what I had been up to, and before I could answer, my father said, "Zara does some freelance work," in the specific tone he used when he wanted to communicate that something was small, without technically saying it was small. Marcus nodded politely. My father then said, "We keep hoping she will find her direction," and he said it with the light laugh of someone making a gentle joke that the whole table was in on. And then he said the word. Not for the first time, not even the 100th time, but in front of 12 people, including my grandmother whose birthday it was supposed to be. He said, "Honestly, she has always been a bit of a disgrace compared to her brother." The table went slightly uncomfortable in the way tables go when someone has said something that went a fraction too far. I put my fork down, I looked at my father, and then I opened my phone and I pulled up the dashboard of the business I had been building in silence for 3 years, and I turned the screen around and I placed it in the center of the table. 47 active clients, a revenue figure for the current year that was 3 times my father's annual salary, a waiting list of 11 businesses who wanted to work with me. The business I had built alone, without a college fund, without a monthly allowance, without a single dinner conversation where anyone had asked how it was going, because nobody had known it existed. The table was completely silent. My father looked at the screen. He looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at his plate. My grandmother looked at me with an expression I had never seen from her before. It was not surprise. It was recognition. She said quietly, "Good girl." 2 words, the only 2 I needed. I want to tell you what happened after the dinner, because the after is as important as the moment, and I do not want to leave you with only the dramatic reveal and not the truth of what followed it. My father did not apologize that night. He was quiet for the remainder of the evening in the specific quality of quiet that belongs to a man who is reassessing something he had organized differently and has not yet arrived at how to talk about the reassessment. My mother found me in the kitchen later and said, "I did not know it had gotten that far." I said, "I know, Mom." I said, "That's part of what I'm telling you." Daniel texted me the next day. He said, "I had no idea." I said, "I know you did not." I said, "I think that's something worth thinking about." He said, "You are right." He said it simply, without defense, and I believe he meant it, and I think it was the beginning of something between us that had not been possible before because the truth was not visible before, and now it was. My father called me 2 weeks later. He said, "I want to talk about what I said at the dinner." I said, "Okay." He did not say sorry immediately. He said, "I think I have not been seeing you clearly." I said, "No, you have not." He said, "I would like to try to change that." I said, "I would like that too." I said, "But trying looks like specific things and not just a phone call." He said, "I know." He said, "Tell me what it looks like." That was the beginning of something real between us, slow and imperfect and more honest than anything we had had before. I am not telling you this story to make you angry on my behalf, though I understand if you are. I'm telling it because I think there are people listening who have been the Zara in their family for years,
the one who is compared and found lacking, the one who is told they are not enough by the people who should be the first to say they are. To those people, I want to say this: the building you do in the silence while they are not watching is the most powerful thing you have. Do not announce it early. Do not spend your energy trying to change a verdict that was never based on evidence. Build until the evidence speaks for itself, and then put the phone on the table. That's my story. If it stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment and tell me if you have ever been the overlooked one in your family. I want to hear from you. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.